That trial was a debacle. It went horribly. And that gave the Sacramento DA either the out or caused them to evaluate it and believe they couldn't prosecute it. All the physical evidence was 100% consistent with everything that she told them, but they weren't sure whether they could rely on her.
Patty chose to disclose the truth about the Carmichael bank robbery, but they didn't want it. Our purpose was served anyway, simply because our assignment from day one was to somehow contain or neutralize the murder charge out of Carmichael. Our only way to do that was to go the immunity route.
So now, Patricia Hearst has come full circle, from kidnapped victim to urban guerrilla to state's witness.
Mr. Bailey and I were both involved at that time with her appeal for the Hibernia bank robbery, first to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and then to the United States Supreme Court.
After the Supreme Court refused to hear her appeal, Patty Hearst was surrendered at the federal prison at Pleasanton, California, to finish her sentence.
After that time, I was advised by George Martinez to turn over the documents which we had acquired to him as new counsel.
Martinez got us fired after we brought him into the case at her request. I mean, we found it through a list of divorce lawyers. So her boyfriend, who had kids and a wife, could get divorced and marry her.
Al Johnson, far more than Anthony Bailey, devoted his life to Patricia Hearst. He's a Boston lawyer who spent years in San Francisco away from his family. And as soon as she hooks up with Bernie Shaw, she cuts Al Johnson dead, and they never speak again.
I was upset by it, obviously, that I had worked as hard as I have ever worked on any case in my life, and I believed in her and in her defense.
She was on the hook for a very grisly first-degree murder, and we got her out of that. Had that been understood at the time, the Hearst case would have been labeled as a major victory. And Brandy and Catherine Hearst understood, and they were very grateful for it. If Patty ever said thank you, I don't recall it.
Patricia Hearst is asking for a new trial, charging her trial attorney, F. Bailey, with an ineffective defense.
Who's on it with Jardiance?
We're 25 million prescriptions strong.
We're managing type 2 diabetes and heart disease.
We're working up a sweat before coffee and saying no thanks to a Boston cream.
Jardiance is a once daily pill that can reduce the risk of cardiovascular death for adults who also have known heart disease. So it can help save your life from a heart attack or stroke. And Jardiance lowers A1C.
Jardiance can cause serious side effects including dehydration, genital yeast or urinary tract infections, and sudden kidney problems. Ketoacidosis is a serious side effect that may be fatal. A rare but life-threatening bacterial infection in the skin of the perineum must occur. Stop taking Jardiance and call your doctor right away if you have symptoms of this bacterial infection, ketoacidosis, or an allergic reaction, and don't take it if you're on dialysis. Taking Jardiance will cause urea or insulin or blood sugar.
Lower A1C and lower risk of a fatal heart attack? We're on it.
We're on it with Jardiance.
Ask your doctor about Jardiance.
Full-time airborne, a classic of immune support. That's more than just vitamin C. It's a new complex with zinc, vitamin, mineral, and vitamins. Save today with Airborne, the #1 immune support gummy, the Russian brand.
In our new podcast, Tug of War, Clarissa Ward brings us on-the-ground reporting from countries where freedom and democracy hang in the balance. Hear stories of brave people fighting for change in places like Afghanistan, Syria, and Russia. Tug of War. Listen where you get your podcasts.
This is what this is like.
There is nothing shameful about the world-old profession.
Should America legalize sex work? The sex trade has never existed without violence, coercion, and trafficking.
This is Luck with Lisa Lee. Tomorrow at 10 on CNN.
Would you ever really put your Japanese?
Upstairs.
Never would I think that I would join a cult.
We have to understand where we've been and how far we've come from.
Shield losing power.
Patricia Hearst went back to prison in May, but attempts to free her before she's eligible for parole are building up. The latest effort centers on her lawyer's conduct of her defense.
All of us, including Mr. Bailey, at all times acted very professionally during the trial. At no time did I observe anything whatsoever which would indicate any lack of effectiveness or lack of attention to duty.
She files a motion saying her lawyers gave her ineffective assistance of counsel. That was rejected.
But they were in a position to have to alter public opinion on her post-conviction.
Patty Hearst waged a press offensive to change public opinion to get Jimmy Carter to commute her sentence. She doled out interviews to sympathetic reporters who didn't know all the facts of the case.
They focused on the victim's part exclusively. Since she's been observed on television and magazines as a victim and not as an urban guerrilla, the narrative has been altered dramatically. So it's not that hard to pull off. You know, when you have a media empire that's back in your play, that's a big deal.
Her family recruits Democrats, Republicans. Ronald Reagan also endorses this effort.
You can't blame Patty Hearst for that. You can't blame her family. Any family would have tried to do it. It's just that most families wouldn't have the money, the connections, the influence to do what her family could do.
Patty Hearst had her story and access to the press, and she used it like a master.
The committee conducts an extensive mail campaign.
Patty Hearst's family organized this tremendous effort to commute her sentence. But they were helped by something that came completely out of the blue.
Never shall forget what we've done
Jonestown was a cult led by a man named Reverend Jim Jones, and he was a very charismatic, manipulative person. He was essentially a con artist. He moved his people to a compound in Indiana. Their passports were taken away. A congressman came to check out what was going on there because these were U.S. citizens. As the congressman was leaving, they went and shot Congressman Leo Ryan and a TV cameraman and a few other people. And Jones then told his people that this was happening. This book was they were also the moved to a guy protesting the convictions of Orlando James. He's not really a suicide, it's a mass murder as far as I'm concerned. But when it hit the news and people saw that over 900 people lost their lives because they followed this charlatan preacher, that to some degree changed the public opinion about why people do the things they do when they're in this cultic situation.
The whole country started talking about the question of how can a charismatic person persuade to act so much against their own self-interest, in this case, kill themselves. That question redounded very much to Patty Hearst's benefit because that was her argument, that the charismatic leaders of the SLA persuaded her to become a bank robber. And in that environment, Jimmy Carter was weighing the decision about whether to commute her sentence.
Well, this is quite a difference from last time, and thank you all. And I'm really happy to be going home. There it is. The commutation. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Yeah, I am. Bye-bye.
I look at her and just marvel to see the sparkle in her eyes and realize that she came through it with a sparkle that's still there. How does it change you? It's always still me.
Although both of Miss Hearst's parents were there with the long ordeal has put a severe strain on the family. Randolph Hearst and his wife have been separated since last year. During the interview with a small group of reporters, this earthbender kidnapping and imprisonment has cost her 5 years of her
everybody
life.
had
But
Chris's
Bessie
own
has
TV.
also benefited from it.
I think that I've gotten a lot of self-confidence. I take a lot of things in stride that make other people fall apart.
By
Becoming a relationship and being off the line.
Patricia Hearst was the family of small black small victim. She adapted rapidly in ways that were surprising. We thought that she was the exception to any rule. Did she brainwash us? Did she convince us that she was something that she wasn't?
I didn't want to prove them that I dressed for the occasion. I'm just really happy.
Patricia Hearst is off on a vacation, she won't say where, to try to get away the last 5 years from what the name Patty Hearst has become.
The new CNN original series, Diana, Sundays at 9 on CNN.
It was like having a rock star join the family. Increasingly, her public success was making their private relationship a lot more difficult.
The new CNN original series, Diana, tomorrow at 9 on CNN.
For the best in sales, service, and selection, it's acknowledged prices Jeep Ram. Your Jeep.
During Jeep Adventure Days, hit the highway in the 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo 4x4 for as little as $228 a month employee, $299 everyone. Or at least the 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee L-Limited 4x4 starting at $409 employee, $469 everyone. You search, you request, we deliver to your home or office. Shop CallingBloomfield.com. Calling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bloomfield Hills.
What's inside Airborne? A blast of immune support that's more than just vitamin C. It's a unique crafted blend with zinc and other vitamins, minerals, and herbs. Seize today with Airborne, the #1 immune support gummy at effervescent brand.
Would you ever relinquish your weapons?
Not a chance.
Never would I think that I would join a cult.
We have to understand where we've been and how far we've come.
Patricia Hearst just published her autobiography titled Every Secret Thing, and in it, she made some surprising admissions.
She now revealed in her book that she also participated in 2 other bank robberies. In one, the Crocker Bank in suburban Sacramento, a woman was killed.
There was a casual way that they did it, too, and talked about it. It was, oh, well, she was a pig. After all, her husband was a doctor. So what?
Toughest part in Every Secret Thing was when Hearst quoted Emily Harris of saying she was a bourgeois pig. Her life doesn't matter.
It was so cold that no matter what they did to anybody, they were always right. Always.
Publishing that book was one of the dumbest things I have ever seen in my life. Because youth's immunity does not cover writing books to make money about how you committed a capital crime. And being the getaway driver in the bank where murder occurred makes the driver liable for murder in the first degree.
How do you get inside for that?
President commutes her on the bank robbery check. He hasn't commuted on any other case. She's still got this murder case hanging over her head. Patricia Hearst had written the book, and so most of the details were out there to kind of lead him where to find the evidence. But the years kept going by, and still nothing had happened.
It took a long time before I felt like I was the victim. You know, I have a life now and children, and I just want to move ahead.
She's almost a celebrity status over this terrible thing.
14 years ago, Patty Hearst was the victim of the most bizarre kidnapping story in American history. The film, Patty Hearst, from Atlantic Entertainment, will be released nationwide in September.
A Kirk adventure.
Take your clothes off, Daddy.
Have you seen it?
It's
Who plays you?
Natasha Richardson. She's Vanessa Redgrave daughter, and she's fabulous.
She went on with her life. It's almost like it never happened.
She's reclaimed her status as a ruling class matron. Her life has not been destroyed by this experience.
You must place that book on the
If anything, it's been enhanced.
She's been in John Waters' movies.
Hi, kids. Remember, always look both ways before crossing. Mother!
It's really impressive that she built a good life for herself.
I think the general concept most Americans, I think, believe that.
The body of information that was created to support her became the narrative.
Well, I just think it's not true that I can look at any
Whenever she did interviews, she was haughty, she was arrogant, she was dismissive, totally different person.
No other people were prosecuted for that bank robbery, so no one kidnappers were charged with prosecuting. No, the rest were dead, and the two that were left alive were not charged.
Why weren't they charged, you know?
Their name wasn't Hearst? I don't know.
They had no evidence that we were involved in a bank robbery. That I brought in because we were not in the bank. And they charged Patricia with that because she was front and center and prominent in the video.
She came from one of the most famous journalistic families in the world. And she understood the power of controlling the narrative. She persuaded the public, by and large, that this was a story about one young woman who was kidnapped and forced to commit one bank robbery. And that's what most people remember about this case. She eliminated Mel Sporting Goods, the bombing she participated in, the death of Myrna Opsahl, which she was morally responsible for.
After 70 years, it was always Patricia Hearst that got the limelight and, this fascination with this celebrity, semi-celebrity. I think everyone just kind of dropped all hopes of ever holding the SLA accountable for my mom's murder. But then, there was a glimmer of hope.
1999, I was transferred into the Major Crimes Division in Los Angeles. I think the first week or two that I was there, I was handed a very thin file, maybe a quarter of an inch thick. I was asked to hold on to it. I was told the FBI was looking for this particular person. Kathy Soley had been a fugitive since 1975, I believe. This was 1999, so it was 24 years had gone by. She was charged essentially with planting two bombs with intent to murder. One at the IHOP in Hollywood, and the other at the Hollenbeck police station. The evidence that tied these bombs to Kathy Solia and to the SLA in general goes overboard. We knew that Kathy Solia was living at 288 Reseda Avenue in San Francisco with Bill and Emily Harris. She had signed a lease to the apartment. Her fingerprints were all over the place, but particularly in the bomb. Every component of the bomb had a matching component in its bomb. And most importantly, you had an eyewitness. The person that sold her the pipe remembered her. And you had a young, red-headed girl coming in to buy two pieces of 3-inch pipe with caps at the ends of them. It caught his attention. If she was ever caught, I'd be responsible for the case. Quite frankly, I didn't put a lot of effort into it because I had a bunch of other murder cases on my plate, and she hadn't been found in 24 years. It was as cold as a case can be. At 8:21 this morning, members of the Minnesota Fugitive Task Force arrested Sarah Jane Olson, whom we believe to be longtime Symbionese Liberation Army fugitive Kathleen Ann Salia.
The new CNN original series, Diana, Sundays at 9 on CNN.
It was like having a rock star join the family.
Increasingly, her public success was making their private relationship a lot more difficult.
The new original series, Diana, tomorrow at 9 on CNN.
This week on This Is Life,
There's nothing shameful about the world's oldest profession.
Should America legalize sex work? The sex trade has never existed without violence, coercion, and trafficking.
This is Life with Lisa Lane, tomorrow at 10 on CNN. In our new podcast, Tug of War, Clarissa Ward brings us on-the-ground reporting from countries where freedom and democracy hang in the balance. Hear stories of brave people fighting for change in places like Afghanistan, Syria, and Russia. Tug of War. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
would you ever relinquish your weapons?
Well, I was scared.
Never would I think that I would join a cult.
We have to understand where we've been and how far we've come.
In 1999, Sarah Jane Olsen was arrested. And Sarah Jane Olsen was the name taken by Kathleen Sawyer. She was in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and she was raising her kids, acting in the Canary Theater. Every now when films relative experience, best you can say.
Police made a segment about her on the TV program America's Most Wanted with the Breakthrough, generating tips about where she lived. And tonight, after living a double life for nearly 25 years, she was quietly arrested in St. Paul.
She was not the same person by appearance that she was back when she did these horrible things. Part of the problem in the case was we were going to have a whole set of jurors that didn't know who the FLA was. They would have never heard of them. And so that led us to looking at some of the other crimes they did.
What did you find when you looked at the Carmichael crime?
We were overwhelmed. We just couldn't believe that nobody had been prosecuted for the murder. Myrna Opsahl. John was outraged. So he made it his own mission to do what he could to try to get justice for his mom.
I'm very happy that my mother's murder is getting the attention and that it deserves, and I trust that justice will be served.
I knew that when she was arrested, all this shit was going to hit the fan, and that we would be exposed again to prosecution in the Carmichael case.
I believe that there is now both direct and circumstantial evidence sufficient to file charges and begin criminal proceedings for the murder of Myrna Opsahl.
January 16, 2002, I was arrested and charged with the murder of Myrna Opsahl. And it was way worse for me at that time because I had a family. I was really angry. I'd already really done the time. I got out of prison the first time on April 26, 1983. And from that time on, I've lived an exemplary life. I became a well-respected investigator for lawyers. Emily and I got divorced in maybe 86 or 7, and we did that because she was in a long-term relationship with a woman that she loved. Well, I got remarried. Had 2 older sons. I was not trying to hide out. I hadn't changed my name. It was a nightmare that we had to revisit.
So when the Sacramento DA did finally file charges against all 5 of the SLA members that were eligible for being indicted, we were happy that finally these people were going to be held accountable. We soon found out that Patricia Hearst would probably end up being the star witness in the case.
Wow.
And I remember being asked, well, why wasn't she indicted with the rest of them?
There were 4 people in the bank. There were 2 getaway drivers, Bill Harris and Patricia Hearst.
Patty did not go into the Crocker Bank the way she went into the Hibernia Bank. But she was a participant. She drove what was known as the switch car.
There's no excuse for not prosecuting us until 28 years later. They had a treasure trove of evidence, most of it provided by Patricia Hearst, and the only explanation that I can imagine, and I have no evidence of this because there is none, there had to have been pressure from the Hearsts to keep that from being brought. They didn't want her on the witness stand in the trial that would get to be the #1 publicity trial of the moment. And she was going to have to tell this story all over again, and she was going to have to try to be honest.
See, that's the thing, you know, for all her bullshit, she didn't testify. What's that telling you? You know, she had to say that in the book, but she didn't. She could have testified. She got on Larry King and said we were all a bunch of assholes, and she wants to do everything she can to prosecute us. Well, girl, all you got to do is testify.
Nope. It was a combination of she didn't want to do it, and the DA didn't trust her as a witness. Charging the murder case with 7 to life, and we were allowed to work out a plea. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with Patty Hearst not wanting to testify and having the power to go with that.
We were told the SLA members were going to plead guilty. We at least knew that there was some level of justice being done, and that we would get to kind of face the people that brought us so much, sorrow and grief.
Whether her murder was a careless accident or a planned assassination, the end result was the same. She was dead, and our family was devastated. Not only did the defendants have that moment in the bench to say it's to prevent her death, they had plenty of opportunities after that to learn from their mistakes and to refrain from further violence without necessarily giving up their imaginary cause.
I do believe that May Harris admitted that she was the one that pulled the trigger and claimed it to be an accident. And I'm happy to give her the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't change the outcome.
The rest of my life, I will continue to feel a deep sense of remorse and sadness for my friends, the death of Mrs. Oswald, and the suffering that caused her family.
When she got out of the fog of being in the SOA, it really weighed heavily on her.
Our role was to make sure that people were held accountable for what they did. When they were prosecuted, mission was accomplished.
Deep in the woods stands a door. My colony exists to protect the world from the awful things beyond that door.
Harry, what's behind the door?
Your colony? Your worst nightmares.
Are you like the Terminator?
This world is an unforgiving place. And that's why they send men like you out there.
I gotta find out what happened to my daughter.
I know where she is.
So what's your deal? Why don't you get out of here?
That guy deserves a bullet in his head.
It's not going to stop until you're dead.
Pretty sure that's been it today.
But no one told me about her, the way she lied. Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there. Well, let me tell you about the way she looked, the way she acted, the color of her hair. Her eyes were soft and cold, her eyes were clear and bright, but she's not there.
My kid's been in jail 5 years.
The Americans did it.
My daughter's innocent. For his daughter's freedom, there's a new lead. One father must find the truth. She's my little girl. I'm not gonna give up. For the director of Spotlight
You're a stranger here.
comes a gripping thriller. He's real close, Jack. Academy. You just have to trust me. Still water, now at a new low price.
Stop! You're gonna get tased! Down on the ground! Down on the ground!
You know you won't go to jail, right? Stop!
Fellow
Todos tenemos una esquina favorita en nuestro hogar, como ese dormitorio tan acogedor en el ático o la cómoda sala de juegos del sótano. El X5 Pod extiende la cobertura de Wi-Fi desde tu gateway para mantener tus equipos conectados sin interrupciones por todo tu hogar. Simplemente enchúfalo y actívalo usando la Xfinity App para disfrutar de un Wi-Fi confiable que ofrece la velocidad que necesitas. Ordena tus X5 Pods hoy y despídete de la zona sin cobertura. ¿Y tu internet puede hacer esto?
There's a verse in Proverbs, and it says, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but in the end thereof are the ways of death. And when I read that verse, it just instantly popped into my mind, the SLA gang. I never could figure out, well, why in the world would they do the things they did? And it dawned on me, it's like they actually believed what they were doing was somehow the right thing to do.
The whole SLA drama, I think, was a Greek tragedy in some ways, in that everybody suffered. Maybe Patty Hearst least of all.
On the day that Patty Hearst was convicted, the message a lot of people took was, no one is above the law, no matter how rich and powerful. But as you see how the story evolved in subsequent years, it's a story about how it's really good to be rich and powerful. Even though she shot up a street in Los Angeles, even though she participated in bombings, even though she robbed banks, when a woman was killed in one of them, she wants a pardon. In addition to the commutation, she wants her record completely wiped clean. And when Bill Clinton is in the waning days of his presidency, she gets it. I think the main reason this story has endured is that it shows how difficult it is to know what's in someone else's head. How did this happen? Who is this woman? Which side is she on? Does she deserve punishment or sympathy?
The woman was kidnapped. She was brutally kidnapped. It's got to be a terrifying experience. Can you imagine? We'll never know what went through her mind.
I do the best job I can to explain it, but there are many people who just will never understand it or believe that they can be so totally controlled by other people that they don't even have to have them standing right there next to them any longer with a gun directly to their head.
I feel that Patty was a kidnapped victim and it was a horrendous thing, but I also think she had a choice.
It sounds so impossible now to believe that someone of great privilege could join in this radical terrorist-like group. But I think she did it to survive.
At some point, I think in that year, if not sooner, Patty Hearst put on Tanya and liked it better than anything she had before.
I truly believe that she was, to some extent, indoctrinated into those beliefs and now regrets it, denies it by saying she was truly a victim the whole time. Because once you take on those beliefs, those radical beliefs, you have to take a certain amount of responsibility for them.
I often wonder, knowing what she knows, how she deals with that dissonance. Unless she just is so repressive that she doesn't even consider it. I don't know.
It certainly is something that I wouldn't want to relive ever. You know, I just think I've really tried to make a life in spite of it.
If you were to stack Patty and Tanya next to each other, clearly the most interesting person is Tanya. I mean, I'm still impressed this very day with her as a comrade. She endeared herself to me over and over again. I remember that person. I remember that person more than I can imagine the person that she's reverted to.
She's a rich lady in the suburbs. She raises dogs for dog shows.
I was talking to one of the press during the Patty Hearst case, and he asked me what I thought of Patty Hearst, and I said, I think she's water. She takes the shape of the glass she's poured into.
She's privileged enough to goof everybody. You know? The epitome of an entitled person. That she can even become a terrorist and a bank robber and still get on with her life. It's quite amazing. America's a funny place.
Let's see here. Let's see. Emily Harris declined to be interviewed after President Emily became a successful computer consultant for various Hollywood studios. She is now retired and lives in California with her partner. Okay. Emily was never charged in relation to any violence. Takes me a while to read these. So, Kathy Salea, aka Sarah Jane Olsen, declined to be interviewed. After serving 7 years in prison, she was released in 2009. Now lives with her husband in Minnesota. You know, you could have just said she lives somewhere with her husband. People are going to look you guys that photo and go, oh, that's my neighbor. Oh, God. Johnny Kilgore declined to be interviewed. Kilgore was captured in South Africa in 2002. After 30 years on the run, he was released from prison in 2009. They really wanted him to go to South Africa. He's currently a teacher at the University of Illinois at Urbana campaign. Wow. Do you know who's teaching your kids? India Shimura declined to be interviewed. She was convicted on explosives weapon charges, served 6 months in prison. She is now an artist and lives in California. How does anybody live by being an artist? Josephine Salea was never charged for any crime. Stephen Salea continued painting houses until his death in 2013. Ross Lewis' conviction for murdering Marcus Foster was overturned in 1981. It was overturned. And has lived a quiet life with his family since his release. Joe Romero is still serving a life sentence for the murder of Marcus Foster. He's up to parole in 2019. He died. Joe Romero is still serving a life sentence for the murder of Marcus Foster. He's up for parole in 2019. Wow, that might be worth it. Patricia and Bernard Shaw remained married until Shaw's death in 2013. They had 2 daughters. Patty's dogs have won multiple awards at the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. I wonder if your mom even knows who she's watching, whose dog she's watching when she watches those things. I know she watches them things on TV. I don't understand why. Patty Hearst declined multiple requests.
Getting some unusual readings from the spore colonies in this system. Right, well, the spore, I hate to say it, but...
At her age, it's got to be hard to remember the lives.
We do not want to get hit by those radiation pulses. Trust me. Watch out. Lokai Raiders are on intercept course.
You're watching CNN on demand. At Fisher Investments, our clients know we have their backs. No, the service has been great.
You got my back, bro. Shit, man. Walk through my old neighborhood with me. That's all bad. That's my bad.
I asked for Fluzone Hydros Quadrivalent. It's the #1 used flu vaccine for people 65 and older.
Fluzone Hydros Quadrivalent is the only vaccine approved by the FDA for superior flu protection in adults 65 plus.
I'm not letting my guard down.
Fluzone Hydros Quadrivalent isn't for people who have a severe allergic reaction to any flu vaccine or vaccine component, including eggs or egg products. Tell your healthcare professional if you've ever experienced severe muscle weakness after receiving a flu shot. People with weakened immune systems, including those receiving therapies that suppress the immune system, may experience lower immune responses. Vaccination may not protect everyone. Side effects include pain, redness, and/or swelling when you got the shot, muscle ache, headache, and general discomfort. Other side effects may occur.
All flu shots are not the same. I raise my game with Fluzone Hydros Quadrivalent.
Ask your doctor or pharmacist for Fluzone Hydros Quadrivalent.
Good to see you. Let's we want
Your Carvana, a company that invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we've created a brand new way for you to sell your car. Whether it's a year old or 2 years old, we want to buy your car. So go to Carvana and enter your license plate, answer your question, calculate your car's value, and gives you a real insurance package. When you're ready, we'll call you, pay you in the spot, and pick up your car. That's it. So ditch the old way of selling your car and take life to the new way at Carvana.
Coming here, what? Foolish! Now, suffer the fate of the
time to acquire their data.
This current census which is ended. Hear what investigators have to say about the case. Are they any closer to learning what really happened? Gabby Petito and the Hunt for Justice. Tonight at 11.
We have their number.
The legendary Vodvar parent. Initially.
Now a waterlogged notebook that was found in Brian Laundrie's remains might be the only thing that could answer some key questions. Investigators say the notebook is possibly salvageable, and they're letting it dry out before opening its pages. At the same time, the forensic anthropologist is studying Laundrie's remains, trying to determine how he died in a swampy Florida nature reserve. A new interview, the family's attorney is revealing what could be critical clues about the last moment Laundrie was allegedly seen alive.
Brian had been extremely upset. The prison guard were very concerned about it. They expressed that to me that when he walked out that they said to me, you know, in hindsight, nothing because the drawings are about, you know, the stage of disappearance. Something I have to comment on right now.
Joining us now is the retired FBI Congressman, who's also a former prosecutor. Jim, thanks for coming back. This notebook was found near Laundrie's remains outside a dry bag. Source says it's not clear how the notebook ended up outside the bag. You heard the family attorney there describing how upset Brian was before he left his parents' house. Is any of this going on?
Well, I think it would be a critical part of what's called a purpose of death investigation. That's to determine the manner of death in these kind of uneasy, unknown situations where there isn't enough information available to do a psychological assessment. The fact that Brian was extremely upset when he left, I think that's a key question that is now answered. Because now we know a little bit more about his state of mind. And the parents, apparently, because of how this lawyer answered that question, apparently they know more.
Successful day at the
they will share.
And much of the focus has shifted to Laundrie's parents and the fact that they're the ones who found his belongings, coming across in less than an hour after entering the park, despite investigators searching the same area for weeks with dogs and high-tech equipment. The Northport Police Department spokesman said he doesn't think this is some kind of a conspiracy. But Laundrie described it as a happenstance. What are your thoughts? Listen, mysterious.
It is mysterious. Their behavior is mysterious, but I will tell you, I've been involved in a number of searches for missing children over the course of my FBI career, and there have been moments when parents and families have actually broken through that and so this area has been underwater for a time. I don't know how long it's been, but this may be the first time any human being went by this area after the water was seized. So just knowing him and knowing where he hung out, what he'd like to do, probably aided their search.
Obviously, there's a lot of second guessing going on about how Laundrie could handle this. They've been criticized for this fact that Laundrie could this week the Laundrie family attorney revealed he told the FBI Laundrie was missing the very day he was returned home from the hike. The Northport police, however, insist they only told him 4 days later. Why would the FBI share this with the local police?
Well, obviously, it's uncertain. Telling the truth here, I think the FBI made a statement about when they first learned about it, and it's possible that there was some miscommunication or a lack of communication between the two law enforcement agencies. But I don't see any reason why the FBI would withhold that information. Brian Laundrie was not going to be a critical part of this investigation until they began. I think our job at the time was to they're actually not giving all the information they have together to their family so that they can make a report as quickly as possible to close the actions that deserve the most scrutiny.
Yeah, and okay, it doesn't add up yet. Thanks so much for what it looks like for sure. Coming up, we will go live with the investigating what is keeping on set of how all the
It's yours now.
We got your car,
It's a savings of at least $50. Look at exam online today.
I thought I was managing my pockets. When I realized something was missing. I simply didn't think we knew. So I dropped my doctor. Nephews, the number one is having my doctor with first. Humira helps people achieve their mission and be honest. And the majority of people on Humira except for
Serious and sometimes fatal infections include tuberculosis and cancers, including lymphoma and active, as a blood, liver, and nervous system problem, serious allergic reactions, and new ovation in target area. Tell your doctor if you think areas where certain fungal infections are common, and if you have TB, hepatitis, or protein infections, or have flu-like symptoms or yours, don't start thinking with certain infections.
Be there for you and ask your gastroenterologist about if Humira, the mission is possible.
Learn how rapid will help you save with Humira.
The GM approaches the problem of mortality. It's a sunny day.
No.
Slow. That's how music is.
That's been
Sounds great. A rich life is about more than just money. That's why at Vanguard, you're more than just an investor. You're an owner, so you can build a future for those you love. Vanguard, become an owner.
This season on This Is Life, we uncover stories that changed America but got buried by those who wrote the history books. This week, sex work. What are the roots of prostitution in the United States? Nashville in the 1860s, sex work was a form of labor. Should it be legal?
There's no time for formalities. A large expecting.
About violence,
Your
coercion, and
This is we saw tomorrow at 10 on CNN.
With Blue Cross Medicare Advantage Plan, you get access to 1.7 million vaccinations. With Blue Cross Medicare Advantage Plan, offer premiums as low as $0 premium,
success makes your private life a lot more difficult here than the original series.
Here we are. And Diana has family that she always wanted. She's the mother of 3-year-old girl. Diana is literally 90 to previous world. Diana ripped up that rule and said, right, I'm going to be a very kind mom.
She worshipped her son to she called it was being enough.
She was bringing big guns, which we were really not used to because the previous generations of role models didn't display their emotions in public.
And watch a brand new episode tomorrow night at 9. And it looked like something out of a science fiction movie. This giant 2-ton something, you gotta check this out, was caught in real life off the coast of North Africa earlier this month. That's why I got the fish. After being tangled in the natural estimated 4,400 pounds of the water car, these are got to be defended and pulled out of the water. Fish is more than 20 block 90 blocks for the part of the largest bunch of fish. The last one's going to move to 90 the Democrats during the vote former publicized the Steve Bannon test for refusing to testify or under the January 6th committee. So because he wanted to enter it, they were Republicans don't want to have this show after the I have no idea. Maybe if the debates and discussions that occurred in this committee.
Now then, let's discuss what's going on. I see very well. Don't mind Commander Jerome. Yes, I'll take all the luck I can.
You undermine the rule of law when you don't have the foundational principle to start with. We were walking up pretty fast. That was Republican Congressman.
Don't
Chip
mind
Roy
Commander
Jerome.
Jerome.
The January 6th committee is a sham, but just a
Don't
reminder,
mind
it was
Commander
Republicans who
Jerome.
blocked
Yes,
the creation
I'll
of
take
an
all the luck
independent commission to investigate the attack. I also caught up with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. You may have heard there was some drama with her on the House floor after she confronted 2 members of the January 6th committee, Liz Cheney and Jamie Raskin, waving her hands and calling the vote on Steve Bannon a joke. So I tried to ask the Congresswoman about that moment, and here's what she told me. And what about that confrontation with Congresswoman Cheney? Why did that happen?
She's a traitor.
She's a traitor?
Yeah.
How can you say that? When we caught up with Greene a second time, she had more choice words for the January 6th committee. What was the rationale behind your vote?
The rationale behind my vote is I'm not self-absorbed like the rest of these jerks here in Congress. They're all ignoring inflation. People can hardly buy food. Gas has gone up. Gas is because they're self-absorbed. All they care about is Congress. They don't care about the American people that pay all the taxes. All you want to talk about is the Trump derangement syndrome, and all you want to talk about is January 6th where there's a riot here. Because I care about American people.
The interview ended soon after fellow Republican Congressman Pete Sessions of Texas walked into the middle of the conversation. So, you doing okay?
Hey, what about all the people that are rotting in jail? Why don't you worry about that?
And that was the end of that. Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland joins me now. He's a member of the Select Committee investigating January 6th. Congressman, you had that run-in with Congresswoman Greene this week. She's calling Liz Cheney, a member of your committee, a traitor. Have you heard her call any of the Capitol rioters traitors? Was this some of the stuff she was saying to you on the floor the other day when talking about this Bannon contempt vote?
Well, it certainly captures the tenor of our conversation, Jim. Look, let's start with this. Liz Cheney is a great constitutional patriot who has